Welcome to AEC Stories, the USS Mount Hood podcast. Today's guest is an awesome guest from the Josephus Daniels. This is Gil Esparza, a former radioman, hull technician, bosun's mate, and a special boats unit guy. So, and there you are. Hey, so you were talking about the woman aboard the ship, that experiment. How was that?
It wasn't easy. I think the Shenandoah had, I believe, about 12 to 1,300 sailors on board. And when we retrofitted their living quarters just aft of the galley, that's when I think they brought 100 women on board. And it made it tough. I mean, we took off to the Med with them on board. Unfortunately, the ship ended up being called the Love Boat, and many of them came back great with child. You know, it was. When we came back to the States after the Med cruise, a lot of them were pregnant. You know, that
happened on a lot of the tenders too. Love at sea.
Yeah, and I mean, they called it the Love Boat. The Shenandoah was nicknamed the Love Boat, and it's kind of unfortunate, but I mean, you know, I was a snipe because I converted from, after I became with deck division, I did all my courses. You know how we do our courses on board, and
when you're striking,
went before the strike, I became a striker to the radio division, and I wanted to be an RM, and I was allowed to strike as an RM, and eventually went to RMA school in San Diego, and then came back to the ship to the Josephus Daniels, and then we headed out to sea and did a lot of time in Gitmo, and then the North Atlantic battle we had with the storm out there, and then back into the Bosphorus Straits, into the Gulf, and into the Black Sea with a battle group. Those were good times, man. I mean, that's when I cut my teeth on my sea legs around the Joey D. I mean, I became a young salt then, literally.
You had a very action-packed ship, and I compare it to mine, and it's funny because Derek gives me shit. Derek gives me shit. He's like, "Hey, you're on this cargo ship. You're on, And I joked with another guy. I said, "Yeah, it was the El Camino of the sea." So we were not likely to hunt down any submarines or chase anybody off. We were more of like support, but the thing is, our ship did go into some dangerous shit, and it was a dangerous place to be.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely. I mean, we couldn't have done it without you guys out there. We couldn't have. Even the oilers that were out there, we couldn't have done it without them. Getting our stores and all the unwraps at sea and everything that we did, man. Hell, bringing on stores, the chore that was when you're out at sea.
Oh, unreps?
Big 46ers are dropping the hook 24/7, man. It's we're bringing in a boatload of stores. All the while you're being tossed and turned and 20-foot waves.
Yeah. That was...
And those are the small ones.
Well, our ship was like the Cadillac, and you were like one of those low-profile cars where you felt all the bumps in the road. You know what I mean?
Oh, you know it, man. Oh, brother. We went through hell of that on that ship. And old Doc Glover, man, he was the man. He took care of us. He kept us on an even keel. That's one hell of a man, one hell of a sailor.
Derek Glover? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. He's awesome. And I was just young and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that when we were out at sea is where I felt the best, man. When I was working port and starboard watches, when they yelled sweepers, man your prunes, up the port, down the starboard, sweepers, man. Hell, I would run to go do sweepers. I just love being on top side and doing the sweepers while the spray of the ocean is hitting my face and you taste the salt on your face, man, when you came back down, you're like, shit, that was awesome. But, that's what it was about, and getting my qualifications and being able to be the lead helmsman, the helmsman, working directly with CIC on the grease board, marking all stunts and anything that's out there, and port and starboard watches, and those were good times, man. Tough times, but they were good.
Well,
we only knew what we needed to know at the time we needed to know it. They never told us what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
We just did it.
Well, that's the need to know, and it's compartmentalized, and there's a lot of classified information going on, and it wasn't shared with the ship abroad. Not everybody had the same clearance. You could be a storekeeper. You could be a storekeeper and not know shit. You know.
Right. You're still doing the shit you guys did out there. I mean, the laundry guys, they were still freaking pressing, doing laundry. What shit was going on topside in the bridge? But, eventually when I became a radio man, I was flying flash traffic to the bridge as a freaking messenger.
Yeah.
I knew something was up because they said we got flash traffic to the bridge. Zip. I was gone, man. I was going to the bridge, and I'd talk to the radio officer of the watch and say, hey, man, I got flash traffic to Captain B sitting on this freaking chair up there, man, checking everything out. Zip, I'd put it in his hands, and he acknowledged me, give me a hand salute, and I'd freaking unask the area.
You get to know, and as a radioman, you get all the traffic, all the intel. You get to see stuff.
Oh, yes.
And you couldn't just share it outside of that little radio room because they didn't have the clearance, right? You know?
Oh no, it was secure. Remember when you pick up traffic, you go to the little window with the bars and you get your traffic. You have to show your little ID and you get your traffic for the day. But everything else, man, that was flash or other stuff, it was for your eyes only, and we had to freaking seal that shit and physically hand deliver it to that person's hand. And it was using the XO or the CO, either of them, ops boss,
yep.
Up in CIC, it was, we didn't really know that we knew where we were at when shit was going down. It wasn't until afterwards we find out, did you know what freaking happened? We were getting ready to wipe out somebody that was freaking, playing cat and mouse with us,
Yeah.
And
it's funny.
but we were never told.
Well, I want to interject something. Like, you could be the radioman. You're aware of what's happening. Maybe you're tracking 2 or 3 subs, or you might not know because that's only in CIC need to know for the OSs, right? Or the sonar men or something, right? So they know something you don't know. You know something they don't know. And the guy that's just down there in deck, tying off some rope or doing something, cleaning up or whatever, he's got no idea that just over the horizon there's bad guys bearing down on you, or just below the surface there's 3 Russian subs. He just sees, wow, what a beautiful day at sea.
Exactly. The snipes are down in the hole. Keeping the fires burning. Freaking machines made down in the engine room, keeping the freaking evap's going.
Yeah.
It was the mess guys are cooking food. You regardless 24/7 for mid-rats, for mid-watch. They're doing all that stuff, but everything worked like a fine old machine. And from the lowest ranked guy to the highest ranked, everything. You knew your job and you did it. You always had Joe shit the rag man. You said, man, get your shit straight.
Right.
But for the most part, everybody was on point, man. And those are the days that I missed the most. I remember when we had gone to the straits there, going to the canal, and then to the Black Sea, and I remember we had a Snoopy team on board. Those camera guys.
Yep.
And they had some. I knew something was up because I was manning the starboard side torpedo tubes. And I was a ship swimmer. Okay. And we would do exercises where we'd fire dummy torpedo loads into the ocean, which were sub seekers. They would find the subs, and the dummy torpedo would go off, and we'd have the helicopter in the air, and it's running that long wire down with the boom that's searching for subs, anti-submarine warfare. Yep. Well, our torpedo tubes would be launched to go into the water and, start the search. So it would simulate that, like we were looking for a sub. Well, it was my job to get with the boats and get out there and retrieve the torpedo and bring it back. Because it was just an orange dummy torpedo.
You had to dive in there and put the hook on it and pull it back in?
Yeah, and you put the hook on it and bring it back in. And those are the types of things that we would do. But I remember that we were going to
Nice.
And I know, and when the Russians didn't have a place to put their subs, so they would anchor them out in the Black Sea in a certain spot. And they would just be sitting there with their silos open. Subs would be, maybe a couple of subs would be there. They'd be ministered to by a tender of some sort. And they'd do what they needed to do out there. And the sea was blue as the deepest blue I've ever seen, laid my eyes on, and like crystal glass. I mean, you could just... There was three of us. It was the CG. We were a flagship.
Yeah.
And there was two other Ticonderoga-class destroyers beside us. And I remember the captains passing the word that engines were going to go flank speed.
Wow.
So we were cooking. We were freaking cooking.
Yeah.
When flank speed was, we were moving. And we were cutting through that water like a knife, hauling at. And I remember seeing the Snoopy team pop up all over the ship with these Canon-looking cameras. And lo and behold, on my port side, about 1 o'clock, I see a silhouette. And it's two submarines with their silos open. And we're headed straight to them.
Oh, peekaboo.
And
peekaboo photo op.
peekaboo, we caught them with their pants down. And I remember the captain giving the order, just all engines flank. The other two ships busted to the right, port and starboard. And next thing you know, our Snoopy teams are just taking pictures with these Soviet sailors and running all over the place trying to close their silos. Their lids are open. They're running everywhere, and they do not know what to do. They're trying to get that sub underwater. But by that time, those ships, we had done a full wraparound turnaround, completed the mission of taking all the pictures and unassing the area, and we were gone in the opposite direction.
Wow.
But it was crazy. And I remember some of the guys on the starboard side of the ship had pulled their pants down and were moving the Soviet subs. And I don't know how many people saw that, but we actually did that. It was quite comical.
I recall a similar situation up in the Persian Gulf with some Iranians.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But it was a great command, the Joey D. It was one of my favorite commands. And after that, I received orders to go to Big John F. Kennedy, aircraft carrier. And
how was the difference? How was the difference of that action-packed front-runner ship to the carrier? What was that like?
Shock. It was utter shock. ComDiv was 3 times larger. The ship, we had a crew of 4,000. That's not counting the flight crew. It was a city, basically. You had McDonald's. You had everything on there that imaginable to you. You had great television system, and
mail.
The ship store was massive. You had a big laundromat, and it was a little city, but the work was much harder because the hours were much longer.
Wow.
Because the needs were greater, I thought.
Yeah.
And I was an RM on board as well. And we did a world tour on that one down to Australia, South Africa, all the way around the world. That was quite a trip.
How did you like Australia? I never pulled in there. How'd you like Australia?
Perth was absolutely beautiful. They loved American sailors there. It was just a great place to visit. We were there for a short period of time and left again. Because when we were on Kenny, we were in that Gonzo station.
Yeah.
They called it. We were out all the time. And that was the time that we had the incident with, we were turned around to the Beirut Lebanon crisis.
That's interesting because Derek was there.
Yeah, Derek was on the Joey D.
And he was.
Matter of fact,
he got flown in there to the embassy. Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And I remember because our flight crew our strike team took off to combat what had taken place. And I know that Joey D was right there as our cover ship, looking out for us and providing. I mean, Joey D was major fire support. You're talking, ASROC launcher forward, harpoons port to starboard, and the new phalanx gun system, which would look like R2-D2 that could just throw out a batch of crap that would wipe anything out.
Sea-Wiz.
We had our 5-inch in the back. And, And, we had the flare system that would shoot that flare that would knock a missile out or...
Oh, you're talking about chaff. Chaff, yeah.
Chaff. Yeah, we had chaff tubes up forward, port to starboard. And, Joey D was a combatant ship,
It was a monster.
And it kicked it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she was badass. But I was on Kennedy with the flight squadron, that's the big flight team, and I remember being in radio at the time when that took down, and it was quite busy in there, and we were getting a lot of flash traffic and a lot of stuff that was going on. But we were headed back when they turned us back at the Beirut Lebanon crisis and said, hey, John's got to get back out there. I think there was another battle group out there as well, the Nimitz maybe. But
wow, I mean that's.
But it was. But like I said, you don't know then until after the fact what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and today with the internet, we can piece together some of our experiences. Like you knew it from a very limited perspective, and even a captain may have not had the whole view of the game board. He might have been a fraction of what the admiral saw and so forth. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Interestingly enough, I remember on Big John when the Falklands crisis went down.
Yeah.
And it was a short one, but we were out at sea when the Sheffield was hit by an Exocet missile.
Oh, the HMS Sheffield, the British ship.
HMS, yeah, the British ship got hit, and we got called on Big John to go pick up the wounded.
Yeah.
So Big John brought on a bunch of these Brit sailors that were injured pretty bad because we had a very large medical ward with an ICU and what have you, and they brought them back. I mean, we went over there and retrieved them guys. They were really badly injured and provided support for Her Majesty's Navy. So, and I remember that day well. In the middle of the night, and we were active, and I was attached to our division, comm division, but I was a red shirt on the Kennedy.
Oh yeah.
So I was on the Hellfighter team.
Okay.
So it was because I was a DC guy for my division, so I was in charge of the fire parties, the firefighting teams, and I was an on-scene leader for them, so I was always doing, the emergency drills that we had. I was leading a fire team, and, we'd run these drills 24/7 all the time. You know that.
I do know that. It's interesting what level of firefighters we became, and then we forget about it.
Good.
Yeah,
we knew the shit, brother. We could plug a hole, we could run a patch, shore a bulkhead, we could de-water a compartment in no time with the P-250 team. I mean,
right.
We did it all, man.
Even as a professional firefighter that's making $100,000 a year out here in California, you're not put on the drill like you are in the Navy. You're not drilled every day, but you might have these massive fires like in LA or other places. Now you really got to use your skills, but the difference is the Navy, you're being drilled 7 days a week out at sea.
7 days a week we were doing it at all hours of the day. I mean, drop weapons to major freaking fires to nuclear support facility fires. I wore a DT-60 on me because I was in the nuclear support facility to simulate a fire in a nuclear facility.
Wow. Was that like a proximity suit, but a little different or something, a little more intense?
It was a little. It looked like almost like a small tube and you have it on your belt loop while you were on board if you were part of the fire team, because if you ever had to fight a fire in the nuclear support facility, NSF, you had to go down in there and you had to wear the DT pocket dosimeter in case you were exposed to anything.
Okay, my misunderstanding. I was talking about proximity suit. That's what I used to have to do.
Yeah.
I used to have to wear the hot suit.
The proximity suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hot suit's hell. But these were those little pocket dosimeters that you'd carry. Because when you were in a nuclear support facility, you were going to get exposed to something. When you'd come out, you'd have to turn this little dosimeter in, and they'd read it, and they'd add it in your medical record on what your exposure was during that time you were down there. And you would go with your medical record, as you go to your career.
And you would have to get deloused. You'd have to get deloused in a real situation. Go through the washing station, like NBC kind of stuff. You know, if you did have to do nuclear fire, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, all that stuff. You know, and then we were doing CQs on Big John maybe a couple of weeks before Christmas, and we had that big accident on board where the A6 intruder came in. The A6 came down with his hook to land. The arresting gear cable was coming back while he was landing. He caught the cable as it was retracting, and he snapped the cable in half.
Oh shit!
And we lost 3 guys that morning on the flight deck, and maybe 7 or 8 were injured severely. They had to be medevac. And I was sitting there, just finished coming off watch. I was a red shirt on the flight deck, and next thing we know, freaking alarms going off saying mass casualty on the flight deck. And I was thinking, what the hell's going on? Well, I was like eating chow and talking and shit, and because everybody's getting ready to go on watch, and oh hell no, this was no drill. It was the real deal, man. They were bringing them down the weapons elevator with legs still in their boots. You know, legs were taken off. Guy was decapitated. Body split open. It was pretty bad. It was a sad time for us because it was just before Christmas, and we ended up going back to Norfolk after that. And it was you can probably still read about that if you look that up.
That's a hell of an accident, and that's what we always were, warned about: snapping cables, ropes, and that thing starts whipping through the air. It's going to chop you in half. That's what it does.
Oh, that cable was brutal. Well, you've seen those arresting gear cables. They're like, maybe 4 or 5 inches in diameter.
Wow.
And they're just wound wire. And that hook just snapped. And it came uncoiled from the big coil.
Yeah.
And it just went around like spaghetti, just hitting everything in its path.
That's just like there's nothing you can do. You're done if you're there.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing. If you're in the proximity of that, you're just a casualty. And that's what happened. It was really sad. But,
that's a rough one.
Chaotic.
You're on so many moving parts on a carrier. You would expect even more than that to happen. People do their job so well that it is a dangerous ass job. Some people just think they're just doing their job. They quit. They kind of stuff it in the back of their mind, not thinking, oh yeah, I'm dealing with death on a daily basis, man. I'm dealing with a high speed of the highest speed airports in a moving, shaking airport that's moving at high speed.
So many things going on. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So many things going on topside, and when flight ops were going on, it was just chaotic, and you didn't rest, man. You come down from mid-rats, and then you go back up. Boom, you'd be back up there, standing watch. I was right on the island on the flatbed with the PKP fire extinguisher. That was my job.
Yeah.
Shit went down. I was gonna douse it with PKP, baby.
Yeah, I had to.
I was a PKP dude, man.
I had to be. I went to Hilo firefighting hot suit rescue training. So on the Mount Hood.
Awesome. Remember those, man?
Yeah, I get to walk into the flaming fake helicopter that was on fire, and it didn't burn me. They say you get 60 seconds before that gold mask, everything starts melting on you. You get 60 seconds of direct flame contact before it eats you alive. So I went in there, pulled the scarecrow mannequin out of the seat and hauled ass out of there. I did it in probably 7 seconds.
I can't imagine, man. I remember the firefighting school that we went to. It was pretty heavy duty in Norfolk. Where you go in that building that was a mock fire. But those fires were hell, man. Remember that?
That was a monster, man. That was like the movie Backdraft.
It was like freaking Backdraft. It was terrible. I mean, it was fire burning your ass, licking you. I mean, it was all over you. I mean, that was a crazy school.
It was funny.
It was well worth it.
I remember it. So they had us go up against the Alameda Civilian Fire Department.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they were a bunch of pretty boys and, had the money and the life and the chicks, and we're just a bunch of broke-ass hungry sailors. They've got this, Hollywood, rig of oxygen, and they're running out of gas, just purge, right? We get an OBA.
You got it.
And we're tucking our boondockers. We're tucking our bell bottoms in our boondockers.
I know, right? Remember that?
Yeah. We whoop their ass. Let's put it to you that way.
Oh, yeah.
The motivation
You nailed it.
and getting paid fat to be the fat cat was different. Now, I ain't taking anything away from all the heroes that have been saving people from these wildfires at all. But this was just an instance that happened once.
Exactly.
We took it seriously.
I mean, it was good. It was, I think back, and all the stuff we did, all the men and the women we served with, and looking at the Navy when we were there and where it stands today, and we read and see these things where these boats have attacked, like the USS McCain, and rammed them. In our day, I honestly believe, as a matter of fact, I wrote a letter to President Trump about my thoughts on how these things occurred.
Yeah.
And I told him about how that would have never happened in our day, because when we were at sea, and I remember being on the bridge, and I remember working those phones with CIC and talking to the sonar techs and reporting every skunk that we spot and telling them where we see it, and we would mark it on the grease board, and the ping jockey, the sonar tech, would say, skunk, ... bearing, ... we've got it. Mark it on your board. I'd mark it. My port starboard watchers would report everything, and I'd report it to the CIC, mark it on the board, and every 15 minutes, boom.
And you had signalmen, too, like me, which had the big eyes, which were reporting, too.
You guys were at the freaking top, checking everything out, and the big eyes.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, how could the port or the starboard watch not see this guy who's a skunk that should have been documented on the board, and our sonar techs and our signalmen know that beggarhead's out there.
Right.
And that it's coming at us and not stopping. I mean,
Let me facilitate it for you, because I've investigated this. They got rid of signalmen in 2003. Okay, and signalmen would have been enough of a preventative measure if they were up to the standards that we used to have. And we were another radar. We were the human radar. Now, I'm not picking on port or starboard watch. They don't, they weren't trained to be using Jane's fighting ships, identify ships as well as we were. We were like the sniper. No, they were the infantry of watch. And you
guys were the shit up there.
That's right. So
you knew how to tell them with those flashing lights. Hey, back that ass up.
That's right. You got these now. I heard that they got rid of a lot of the watches. The people aren't getting enough sleep, and I heard that they use cameras for some stuff.
Yeah, freaking snowflakes, man. Damn snowflakes.
That's how we feel, but it's frustrating because we want our country protected. We want that insurance, right? And you're screwing with the insurance policy. It's like letting your buddy, drive your Corvette drunk. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, bro, can't have the keys.
When that happened, I mean, I was blown away. Not once, but twice.
Right.
And I'm like, how could that happen twice? How on earth can that happen? And now that you're telling me, I had no idea they did away with the signal.
Yeah, that's just one aspect, but the rest of it, they did well. They did well from 2003 up until recently, so I can't shit on them for that per se. But I will say that the standards probably got more and more. The hardness. What's changed since 2003 till now is people have got sucked into the digital blanket of the cell phone and the iPad, and you get computers on board, and so your situational awareness is shit comparatively.
It's gone.
You're sucked in.
Because I remember, I mean, I took my sport starboard watches, my bridge watches so seriously, man. I had to, because when I was on the lee helm, I had to work them engines.
Right.
When I was on the helm, I had to steer that ship where my commanding officer told me to, or the officer of the watch told me to. There was a reason for everything that we did, and we looked sharp up there, and we were on our point.
Yeah.
That everybody was on point, And now when I'm thinking about what happened, I'm like, what's happening?
There's been a cultural change, and I blame a lot of it on technology, because these kids grew up in a different time than us, and we put them in the matrix with all these video games on the phone and instant access. Boredom, we used to deal with boredom like a normal part of the day. And we could eat boredom for lunch. We could just get creative with boredom and focus more on our job. Whereas today, we've generated a new generation. It's not their fault. They've been trained to be this way, And I reached out. Let me tell you, I blasted hundreds or whatever, just tons and tons and tons of different Facebook groups going, hey, tell the SecNav to call me. I have a solution. And part of it was signalman, but then I heard I learned more about it. It's like, well, you could put a signalman out there, but if he is not trained to live without these devices, because who leaves their cell phone at home anymore? Nobody does. We're afraid we might miss that call.
I thought about that. Are they taking their cell phones with them at sea now, and are they able to communicate? And I mean, now they're talking to their families more than hell. Remember when we used to have to get the Radioman to put us on that? What was that little phone we used to use?
Oh,
to talk to family.
The landline.
Emergency or something.
Yeah.
You had to do over. Honey, how are you? Over.
You say over after every transmission, right?
Over every transmission was over.
Well,
but it was.
Think about Columbus. That he would go away for 7 years. I'll see you in 7 years, honey. We would go for 6 months and get mail and feel like we were cheating. This new generation doesn't know what it's like to wait for mail call in 3 months. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
so they now have that computer where they can just see each other, FaceTime.
Yeah. So this connection is cool. I mean, I'm going to tell you, Gil, this is just a side note, but I was a military brat, and I just talked to a friend from school today. We went to high school in Italy. We were living on an Army airborne base. We're the 101st, 509th, all those guys, right?
Yeah, heck yeah, the good boys.
Yeah, so I lived on that base as a kid. They jogged by my high school. I was a military brat. And I lived there for close to 17 years overseas. And I'm living over there, and my friends would move away every 2 or 3 years, and I never knew where they went because they didn't know where they were moving to, and they didn't have a landline phone, and I didn't have a phone to call me on because Italian...
So you lose track of them,
Yeah, it was $20 a minute to call each other, so that never became a reality. You couldn't write them a letter, and so forth. And very few would remember, because they were back in the States eating McDonald's, watching HBO, going to a roller disco.
You got that right, man. You got that right.
Right, so...
Yeah, man.
So...
You nailed it. But that's what I mean. I mean, I wrote, and I got a response back from the White House, but it was, probably just a chain letter. Somebody said, hey, thank you so much for your thoughtfulness, and regard our Navy as the world's greatest Navy, and we plan on making our military stronger, and I'm glad they're looking to pass that $700 billion military budget. I'm excited about that. It gives our men and women a pay raise, but you know, it just shocked me that when we were out there, when we were keepers of the raging main.
Yeah.
You know, I like to call us that because that's who we were, that's who we are. We freaking paved the way for what's happening today. But much of that is lost. You know, I think of people like Master Chief Colonna, man, from Holtec Division on the Shenandoah, the Master Blaster with 37 years of service, almost 40, to Senior Chief Creswell, who was on the Shenandoah, man. I watched him come up from Seaman to Senior Chief, to Chief McAllister, who we lost in Alexandria, Egypt, and was killed. And, you know, Otis, I nicknamed him Otis, one of the best HTs, and I would go into any firefight with that guy because I knew that Otis would take care of my right and I would take care of his left.
Yeah.
People like them that I never forget. I knew that. I remember messaging you telling me, Esparza, I need you to meet me down in the RDIV. And we were out at sea going to the Gulf of Sidra after Muammar Gaddafi. And he said, Esparza, I need you to get two of your best men. And I was the division petty officer there. And he said, I want you to get two of your best men, get all your gear together. Something's going down, and you and the two men that you pick run at risk of being taken by helicopter to keep a ship from sinking should it be attacked. And that was when we crossed the line of death. That he said, if you cross this line of death, we're going to blow you guys out of the water.
Yeah.
So I picked two of my best guys, man. And one of them was Creswell and Otis. And by golly, these guys were the best of the best in firefighting and you know, keeping a ship from sinking. I knew that these three guys could get the shit done.
Yeah.
And we sat there and waited and waited and waited, thinking, well, we sat there with all our gear, everything on, thinking, when are they going to call it? When are they going to call it? When are they going to tell us to go to the flight deck? They're going to send us off. And 3 days it was like that. And before you knew it, we were done. We'd gone in, blew out all of his platforms, and he was shooting those tow missiles at people, and blew all the platforms up. And we had church made that said, I crossed the line of death. It was pretty awesome. But these are the men that paved the way.
Yeah.
That I recall. And those are the guys that, you know, you guys are the guys that I say, hell.
Yeah.
It was good then. You know, we were sailors, proudly, you know, well-trained sailors. We knew a little bit of everything. We were, you know, surface warfare specialists. We knew everybody's job because that's how we rolled. And it was, if you needed to step in, you could step in. And that's what I feel sometimes is missing today. But
right?
You know, I could be wrong.
No, I feel you. It's like, you know, when we were younger, you're a little bit older than me, but our generation was kind of the rock and roll, long hair, the end of the hippies, rolling into disco, you know, and mine was just the beginning of MTV. But, you know, me growing up, you see, before I joined the Navy, I was thinking about it last night or the night before. I lived in Italy when they kidnapped General Dozier and the president of Italy, Aldo Moro, and killed him.
Yeah.
I lived there when we had terrorist threats as a kid. I was in Berlin in 1986, just one block away from the disco that got blown up. They killed a couple servicemen. I was at a roller disco around the corner from the other disco, which I might have went to. I was there on a teen club trip. I was in, you know, the line of danger as a youngster. You know?
Yeah, they could snatch you up or bomb you right there on the spot. I mean, I remember them telling us, don't go to these places.
Right.
Don't go to these places. They could bomb you. They know you're Americans. They could kidnap you. You're screwed. And hell, we go there.
Hey, man, I was
with some crusty ass sailors, man. They would fight tooth and nail, man.
Well, that's the funny thing when you're pitted against each other, right? Like today, I'm married to an awesome Russian wife, but when I was a kid, I was told, watch out, that's the devil, fight them, fight you. And I've made some Russian friends over the years. It's the governments on the governments, right? Now, I'm not saying it's that way around the world. Like we would talk to some Lord of War, and he wouldn't think about snapping our neck because killing is his daily business. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying that it's interesting to be hunting for AGI spy ships as a signalman, to later end up with the Russian wife. 20 years later, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And you know,
it's funny.
That's what I mean about the difference in our Navy and today's Navy.
It was hardcore. We grew up in an era where there was more hand-to-hand, more like you get a problem, step outside, stand up, be a man, or shut up and sit down. And
hell yeah. We pick and strap the gloves on and go on a flight deck and go at it.
Right.
Or better yet, we just go to the bar and beat the shit out of each other and hug ourselves all the way home, beat up.
That's right. Get all that extra testosterone and angst and toughness of dealing with the stressful day on the ship. And that was normal.
Oh, God.
Right?
Well, there's some of the stories in places like frickin' Sigonella, Sicily. Frickin', oh, my God. Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Get out of here.
I like Sigonella. I played football in Sigonella in high school. How's
Get
that?
out of here, really?
Isn't that funny?
Sigonella, man. I was there for a little bit. That place, there was nothing there, man.
That base.
Was it that airstrip?
I like the base.
I was at the air base there, but we tried to find the nearest bar, and we had to take a freaking cattle car to the bar.
Oh, jeez. Somebody had a Fiat and you all piled in?
Oh, we all piled in the cattle car, man. We'd go, hell, they wouldn't even stop. It just slowed down. We'd all jump out. And they'd see us coming in the city, and they would be like, oh, shit, here comes a bunch of sailors. And we'd go in there and get lost.
You had to be careful, though, man. That was mafia territory, big time, bro.
Yes, it was mafia, but we'd get so lost, and that freaking cattle car would come, honk the horn, and we'd all come freaking stagger drunk, get back on it, and head back to the barracks. I mean, this was our routine, man, on the weekends. It was crazy.
Let me ask you, I'm just wondering.
But when we worked hard, man.
I'm just wondering, like, what year were you in Sigonella? I wonder if I was there the same year. What year were you there?
Oh, God.
If you can recall.
It was in the 80s. It was in the 80s.
Me too. I
might have been there.
83?
Might have been there at the same time.
80,
yeah,
80,
about 82.
83 I was there. 85 I was there. 86. Yeah.
It might have been right between that time because it was after. It was during my. It might have been during the Shenandoah to the Kennedy. Because after I left Kennedy, I went to the Shenandoah.
Okay.
And then after I left the Shenandoah, I went to SBU 24.
Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I just wanted to make a point. Like, a lot of you veterans, since I lived all over the world as a military brat and then joined the Navy, I'm like, was there a possibility this guy that I'm talking to on the podcast, we walked in each other's shadows, that we might have been at the same PX in 1984, and then we didn't know each other, and I was a little boy, and you were grown up, and all of a sudden I'd be grown up talking to you, and we're doing a podcast. That's what I was wondering.
Wouldn't that be something?
It's kind of like the butterfly effect, you know? It's like, wait a second. Like, yeah, I walked past you in 1984, but I didn't know you. But, hey, let's talk 30 years later on a podcast.
Absolutely. That is so crazy.
Isn't that funny?
That is so crazy. Yeah.
So SBU, that special boat unit, which is now SWCC today, right? SWCC boats?
Yes.
You guys...
SWCC boat. And SBU 24 is no longer there. It is now a reserve force out of Little Creek, Virginia.
So that was a special boat unit, and you guys are the support for the Navy SEALs and their missions.
Yeah,
you guys are busy.
We were support for the SEAL team mission.
What was that training like? Did you have to go back and qualify physically and go through a whole new kind of thing to?
Well, the story with that is the way I ended up on SBU 24 is when I left the Shenandoah, I submitted a request to take the test to buds.
Okay, buds training.
Buds, yeah, and I went ahead and walked through the chain of command because I had switched from radioman to hull technician.
Oh, wow.
And I got tired of being a radioman, and I did another conversion and went to HT school in Philadelphia and became a hull tech.
Yeah.
And I finished my career as a hull technician. And I was old to be a SEAL. I was old to even go into the training.
I was wondering about that. You were kind of like 3/4 through your career. That's why I was asking. Yeah.
Exactly. I was considered really old to go through the training. But
Okay.
I was committed I knew that I wanted to try it and do it. And, I mean, while it was tough. I walked it through the chain of command. The chain of command says, yep, you can take the test. Because you couldn't take the test unless your command allowed you to.
Right.
And I had been training for it, so they allowed me, and I had to do a special request. And I took the run, swim, calisthenic test, passed everything, and was given the paperwork that they signed saying that you have met all the physical requirements to apply to buds. So there was a packet that you had to put together, including a physical. You had to go through the entire physical. You had to get a diving physical. And I went to another boat unit and did the dry dive to make sure that I would be able to take depths and be able to be cured through pure oxygen in case I got the bend.
Okay.
So I went there and I did a what they call a dry dive in a tank. And I went the objective was to go to 210 feet at 60-foot increments. You had to stay at 210 feet for 10 minutes, and then you'd come up and go on pure O2 to clear any embolisms from your body. And if you pass that, then you could take your packet to go to the next step. So I did that, and I eventually passed it. I went in with 5 guys, and 5 guys washed out, and I was the last guy to make it, and I was the only one to make it.
Wow.
So after that, I ended up walking my packet. I took a weekend to Washington, and flew into Washington, D.C., and walked my packet to the Pentagon.
Ha.
It's quite funny. And I'm walking through the Pentagon looking for the Navy SEAL teams. It was hilarious. and I'm in my dress blues. I've got my packet under my arm, and I'm walking through, and I'm an 8T2, all dudded up. And they said, oh, they're over here. So I see this sign, and it says Naval Special Warfare Unit. And I walk in, there's like 4 desks, and there's a first class, a chief, a captain, and they're just sitting there talking. They go, can I help you? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm here to train my packet to NASPEC War. He goes, what? He goes, what packet? I said, I have a packet here to attend buds, and I'm walking it to you guys. He goes, where'd you come from? I said, I came from Norfolk. He goes, how the hell did you get here? I said, I flew here to walk my packet to you. He goes, you got to be shitting me. Sit down. It was hilarious, man, because he pulled my packet out, and he goes, shit, this is pretty good. And he says, you speak any languages? I said, yeah. And he goes, what do you speak? I said, my first language is Spanish. And he goes, cool. He says, can you run? I said, yes, sir. He said, I can't run real fast, but I can run till you tell me to stop. He says, good, you're going to need that. He stamps my packet, sends me on my way. He says, we'll be in touch with you. So I go back to Norfolk. The next thing you know, I get orders to Bud School.
Coronado or Little Creek or where?
Coronado.
Okay.
So I ended up in Bud's, class of 148, and went through Bud's pretty much halfway through it. Got injured, hurt my ankle on about a 40-foot fall from a high line. They messed up both of my ankles. They put me on a medical hold. And in Bud's at that time, they would set you back if you got hurt to the next class that was classing up.
Rollback, yeah.
Yeah, they rolled you back. So I got rolled back because of my ankles, and was ready to class up again, and just kept having problems with my ankles, and it ended up being that I had to go to a medical review board on the, through the BUDS program, and they said, look, man, your ankles ain't going to cut it. And they transferred me to SBU 24.
Wow.
And I went across the street to where Marine Corps Sniper School was on Coronado.
Yeah.
The bus was across the street, and then the Coronado base was on the other side. We were completely separate from all the other people, but we pounded from 3, 4 o'clock in the morning till late in the evening, and that's when I ended up to SBUs, and got transferred back to do my final tour in Norfolk with SBU 24, and that's how I ended up on that command and working with SEAL Team 4. I made a lot of wonderful friends. Some of my classmates that I was in with Class 148 that graduated were called to duty in the Panama Invasion, and Chief Mack and another first class Rodriguez were killed in the entry to Panama during the invasion. We lost 2 SEALs that day. That was part of my boat team.
Wow.
So I was like, man, if I'd have stayed, if I'd made it, maybe that'd have been me and not Rodriguez. I would think all these things, and you're kind of pissed off that you didn't make it, and your shipmates did, and Rodriguez gets killed, and Chief Mack gets killed. Lieutenant Mack gets killed, and coming in on a parachute jump, they got silhouetted on the airstrip when they were taking the airstrip in Panama, and they were shot before they even hit the ground.
That was a horrible turnout, that event. Same with the airborne. Everybody went down bad on that. Yeah.
Everybody. It was bad, and so my heart was set on becoming a frog, and I never did. But I kudos to my team that did make it through, and I figured I'd go to SBU 24 and become an outstanding support team member to them, and that was some of the best duty I ever had. That is,
didn't you have additional training once you went SBU? Like, did you have any jump or jump school and all that stuff?
Yeah, I didn't do that. I did the high-speed water entries, the cast and recovery training. We did a lot of weapons training. We'd load up with lots of ammo. We'd go out to sea, and we'd do a lot of firefighter training because, we were a support team, and if shit went down, we were going to provide fire support to them should they need it. And at that time, we were getting into Desert Storm. Desert Storm had started, and I was activated to go to Desert Storm because when I did eventually get out, I stayed with SBU 24 as a reserve unit, and that was my duty every time I do my reserves.
Wow.
And,
that's I was there with you. Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I ended up, after leaving Coronado, I got out and went straight active duty reserves, and I was attached to the Cincinnati Naval Marine Corps Reserve Center, and I was an instructor there, a CVR defense instructor for the Naval Reserves, and I trained every week with SBU, I did active duty training with SBU 24, and do all of our training. I got recalled to the Desert Storm to go out, and during a training exercise is when I got injured.
I understand.
On a high-speed catch and recovery exercise. I got jacked. It was bad.
What'd you do?
I'm surprised I didn't drown. I'd be at the bottom of the Atlantic right now if I wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
I still have nightmares of that.
I can imagine. We
were on SBU 24, and we were getting ready to do a high-speed cast and recovery training, and the weather was choppy that morning, I recall, and the seas were a little choppy, but the Master Chief said, we're going out, we're doing this exercise, we don't care what the weather is, get your gear, get your shit together, and let's go. And I remember getting my bulletproof vest, my little vest that's got the flotation device, had all my gear on, my BDUs, and I zipped up, and the vest they gave me was loose on me that day. And I kept bitching the chief, said, this freaking vest is too loose. reaches up to my neck and
Right.
goes into my face. I said, it's not appropriate. And he says, Esparza, keep your freaking vest on. We're getting ready to roll out. And I said, Chief, this shit ain't any good. It's not going to be good. I had to hold the collar down when I was in the water to keep it from going up.
Right.
And that wasn't acceptable. And I remember I'm sitting on the deck, waiting to get on board, getting ready to go this exercise, and there's no turning back. You can't say, oh, time out, I'm not going. You don't do that shit, you just go.
Right.
So this guy who's there, he gets sick, and he can't go, and he's my side, and he comes up to me and says, Esparza, switch jackets with me. So I unzipped mine, my Kevlar vest, took it off, slapped his on, zipped it up. Oh, shit, it was perfect. Snug. I mean, no movement other than what I needed. And I knew when I was going to be in the water, I could move, I could swim. And sure enough, 5 minutes afterwards, we're on board and we're clicking out to sea. And that's when the match chief does the platforms go down. We all line up 2 by 2 and we're ready to go. Next thing you know, match chief gives the order that the boatswain make more power because we're having too much skip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On top of the white caps. He says, the faster we go, we'll get on those white caps and let's smooth out. Once we smooth out, we're going out. So therefore, we're doing 30, 40, 50 knots. I mean, we're flying.
Yeah.
Big diesels are cranked up, and we are rocking it. And we're 2 by 2. Arm on one side, your top, arm on one side hip. When one guy goes out, your arm is forward in front of you. You go out right behind him. You do a back roll.
You're jumping off the back of the boat at high speeds, right? And then they're going to recover you,
At
too.
high speed.
Right.
Yeah. You're jumping out of the back of the boat, and then you're going to fan out and do a recon. And then you're going to come back out, and they're going to pick you back up.
You were doing practice for simulating with the SEALs to recover them from the water, right, at high speed, basically?
That's exactly what we were doing, so we would know exactly what we had to do. Well, hell, my buddy goes, the master chief hits the top of the freaking boat, a Sea Fox, hits the top. When that slap goes, you got to go out the back. So I was like the fourth guy. There was 2, and then I was the next 2, and there was 2 more behind me, and then 2 more. I think there were like 8 of us.
Yeah.
And the second group, I'm in the second group, and out we go. I remember hitting that freaking water. I mean, I hit it like, you're supposed to roll on your back.
Yeah.
Slide over the top, and you just kind of, like a surfboard.
Yep.
Well, the flight cats were so bad, and the twin diesels were creating that massive wake.
Oh.
That wave hits me right smack in the face. I thought I got punched by freaking Mike Tyson.
Wow.
Buddy, all I saw was stars, and my ears were ringing. I couldn't see. I was disoriented, and I'm in the ocean, and that boat's gone. And just me and my swim buddy are there, out in the middle of the ocean. And we're all scattered, and we got a rendezvous and come together and swim in. We got about a mile to swim.
Oh, shit.
And then after that, yeah, we had, and here we go, and we're swimming. And my guy saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" I said, "No, man, I can't see." And I was dizzy. I was seeing like stars, these blue stars everywhere. It was like a punch drunk.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it, man.
You probably get a concussion.
Like,
you get a concussion from it.
yeah, and I'm wondering what the hell's going on. I'm disoriented. He said, "No, we got to go this way. We got to go this way." And I just knew that my strong side is my left side. His strong side was his right side. So I'd go left, he'd go right, and I'd watch him, he'd watch me. And we took off, and we just swam for about 45 minutes to get to our rendezvous point. And I couldn't get out of the water. There was a bunch of rocks that you had to climb over, and he pulls me out of the water, and he said, "We got to go, man. We got to be back in the water at a certain amount of time to get picked up." So I run with him, and we're running, and I'm having this freaking massive headache. Then we find the long pier that we're supposed to run off of, and I got pictures of it. Somebody's taking pictures. And we run off this pier and jump back in the ocean. We have to swim back out to sea for the pickup. And then they show the boat picking us up.
Wow.
I remember coming back that evening, turning in all our gear. You have to put everything in your sea locker to dry everything out. And that was at we went to chow because we were living in the same quarters. And I told him, man, I said, my head feel like it's going to pop. So we leave the galley, and he takes me to the medical board. man, my partner's messed up. We had a sea training exercise, and he got hurt. So I'm at medical, and next thing I know, I pass out, and I wake up a couple of days later.
Wow. That's a straight concussion. You probably had, let me guess, because I was EMT guy for a while. Let me guess, you might even had embolisms or swelling on the brain from that, because the water, also having been Mr. Lifeguard and a bunch of other things too, like you, like be Mr. Everyman, be G.I. Joe, the Swiss Army knife, right? The water at a certain speed turns into cement. And that's if you hit it the wrong way. If you don't go with if the wake is there, it becomes like a wall. You get hit in the head with a brick. Didn't matter. If you dive in the water, if you belly flop, that hurts from a certain height. If you belly flop from a cliff, that's different. Right?
Well, you know what, you're absolutely right, because after that, I was put on medical hold.
Right.
And I was on I ended up having an axial loading fracture to the C-spine.
Really?
Yep. And I ended up being put on a medical hold, and I wanted to continue my service, and I had to go back to Washington to a medical review board to fight them to let me stay in. And they said, no, your injuries are too severe that we're going to let you out, and we're going to give you your pay and everything. And it's funny, because I was looking at my file, and it says here, because this is from the colonel. There was conducted by a colonel, Captain Pryor, Colonel Kingsfatter, and Captain Crompton were the medical officers that examined me at my medical review board. And their final paragraph, I was reading it tonight, it says, because the injury occurred in training for specialized warfare using specialized equipment, that is, in fact, instrumentalities of war, the panel opines that the member's disability is combat-related, and they discharged me with medical.
Wow.
They call it retired, temporary disabled retired, TDRL.
Wow.
And so shit went south from there. Lost the rest of my career. I was at 18 years.
You were 2 years from retirement.
Yeah. And so now, I got out, used my GI Bill, went to school, and, raised two awesome warriors, Marines. My two sons were Marines.
That's phenomenal.
But the exciting thing for me, Clint, is reconnecting with all my brothers in the fleet.
Yeah, we're the ones that we're the holders.
Phillips, Mac, Cresswell, all them guys, you guys. I mean, all the true fleet sailors. But today we sit and talk in our little sites, of our command, and we're all waking up these things that were in us that happened that only we know.
Yeah.
And that's why your podcast is so important to me, to Grover and the rest of the crew, because we will always be keepers of the raging name. I mean, that's what I call it. That's what we are. Because we were there, we've tasted the salt, we've lost our brothers, we've made it back, we've wanted to stay, we've wanted to contribute, and now we see today's fleet, today's military, out there kicking ISIS's ass,
Yeah.
And not holding back. And I'm saying, hey, we were there once. We were there once.
We were there, and if somehow the podcast grows where we can share our experiences and mentor younger sailors about some of the things that we learned. I mean, it's not like we were pilgrims. And we're talking about sailing a wooden boat.
Right? It feels that way, damn it.
Well, You know, we weren't on Christopher Columbus's ship getting scurvy.
There was nothing like getting smacked by a freaking monkey's fist.
Well, that's the thing.
Remember that damn thing?
Yep. I remember the monkey fist. You guys, you bosun's mates used to make those. But like,
yeah. But you see my point, yeah.
I do. Well, you see me, I came in the Navy later than you, but I was in during the same time. I was there for Desert Storm. Our ship went there. And
you know, we only now they're looking at us and saying, "Hey, we can't forget our Desert Storm guy. We were forgotten."
Well, we were.
Now the Veterans Administration is saying, "Hey, we got to take care of them."
That's right, and they're realizing that a lot of people have PTSD from that event because, oh no, you didn't do anything.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you know.
I beg to differ. You know, we were there.
I know this because I grew up on a base in Italy, and I had drinking buddies that were Vietnam vets.
Yeah.
And a lot of them had very lucid PTSD, and I would see them go into like combat mode in the most craziest situations. Like, I remember being a punk teenager drinking at this former door gunner's house, you know, from the Hueys. And he's like, "I'm going to bed." We're like, "Okay, see you later." We're out there drinking, playing quarters, you know, drinking beer in his living room.
Oh, yeah.
And he comes diving over the couch, screaming, "Mao, Mao, Didi Mao, Mao." I mean, he's like...
Yeah, Didi Mao, Didi Mao. Oh, yeah, that was the norm.
Dude, he was having a full-blown nightmare, full-blown panic attack, full-blown...
Yeah.
He was in state. He was in a hypnotic state in the position that terrified him for his whole life. And he had PTSD, right?
Yeah.
I had another...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, man. You're spot on.
I had another friend who was one of the first Green Berets, Kennedy Special Forces. He was a commando.
Mm-hmm.
He went into the Foreign Legion afterwards. This guy couldn't get enough.
Oh,
He was one of those guys.
there.
That's a badass right
I
there.
have a friend like that, man, who can't get enough.
Right.
I know some freaking boys who just can't get enough. They're still in the game.
They can't come back from the war. They have to stay in it because that's their life now.
Yeah.
And this guy, I remember showing up at his house, and his eyes were glassed over, and he had a knife out in front of me, and he was ready to attack me because he didn't recognize me because he was in state. He was in state. I was like, "Oh, this shit." Oh, I go, "Oh, so, you know, I have me and many shipmates, and you. A lot of people have PTSD, and a lot of people like to simplify it or say, well, you couldn't get it unless you were in a jungle and you know, some guy popped out and stabbed your compadre with a knife in the head, and you saw that and you freaked out or whatever." They have a lot of misinterpretations. Yeah. What it really is I tell a lot of people what I believe it to be is that you are in a high stress situation, life or death situation. You were on guard for such a long period of time that you jacked your situational awareness into hypervigilance, and it stayed there, and the meter never came back down. So you come back, and you try to reintegrate into society, and our civilian world doesn't understand us as well. They don't know because they weren't there. And one thing growing up, I used to hear from the Vietnam veterans all the time was, "Oh, don't even," you know, like if you say, "I know what you mean, man," they go, "You don't know what I mean." They'd want to fight you. They
I know. They want to fight you when you say, "Oh, you don't know what the fuck I mean." Oh, they go off.
Yeah.
They go off.
Because
my brother was one of them.
Right. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. So I learned.
That's why I remember. Yeah, you go ahead.
I learned not to step on their toes or say, "I know what you mean." And
yeah, we learned that. Yeah.
You could get entrapped by saying, "I understand," which was another attack.
Yes. Exactly. The best thing to do is just shake your head, acknowledge it. Yes. Because, you know, when I went to my PTSD screen at the VA,
right,
that guy just pissed me off. And I told him, I said, "Dude, if you're looking to piss me off, you've absolutely done it."
Right.
Because he was, I don't know if he was trying to trigger me or what he was trying to do, but he succeeded, and I walked out. And I remember the female medical person saying, "Sir, please come back. Please come back. Come here. Do you mind talking to a woman?" I said, "I don't give a shit who I talk to." I said, "But this asshat's telling me." He told me, "Well, people say they were there, and they really weren't there." And I had my whole military record microfished before I got out of the military.
Oh, lucky you!
Remember when you could do that?
Yeah.
And I sent to Washington to get a microfiche copy of my record of everything I did.
Right.
And I just so happened to have my record with me. And I said, "I got proof here of all these things." And he's telling, "Well, people say that, but they just really didn't do that." And he's just some freaking tard. So I walked out on him and got pissed off, and eventually ended up going back and talking to a female who documented a bunch of shit, and I was diagnosed with the hypervigilance disorder.
Yeah.
Because you said exactly what I'm talking about. We remain in that hypervigilant state, and it's so hard to come down from it.
It is.
It's so difficult to come down from it. And even my wife told me this. I don't know what, what my wife told me yesterday when I told her I was doing a podcast? She says, "I don't know what you do, why you're doing that. Your PTSD is going to go off the shelf."
Well, I'm empathetic to you, and I understand because I have it.
I said, "Letty understands me because she's with me on it." I said, "He understands us, man. Yeah, I'm going to be fine, honey.
Well,
have a glass of wine, I'm going to chill."
That's right, and I'm not trying to trigger anything. I'm trying to talk about it and break it down so you could actually live better with it, if anything. Because this is my therapy.
And that's what I told her. I said, "It's good for me, honey. It's good for me because I'm letting this stuff out. It's there.
Yeah,
letting it out." And she says, "All right, go ahead." So I got the green light from the captain.
Well, let me be honest with you. I have several people that I have come back on. This is our therapy. This is our meeting. This is what we do.
Man, I'm thankful for it, man. It's made my heart glad. It's made me think of my shipmates that I've lost.
Yeah.
I miss them, man. Thornhill, Otis, Chief Mack, Rodriguez, Lieutenant Mack. These were men that I served with. They were men of distinction, men of integrity.
Yeah.
And, I learned a lot from them. And sometimes I ask myself, shit, if I stayed with Igon instead of Rodriguez, you ask yourself these things, and I can't think like that, but it brings that to mind,
Well, you could think about it, but it's not your burden to bear, and you still face dangerous stuff on what you did anyways, whether it be the Joey D or whether it be
and that's what my counselor always said, "Gil." That's what my counselor always said, "Gil, let's think about it. How many times have you done this?
Right.
How many times have you done this?" "Oh, God." She goes, "And how many times has something happened to you?" I said, "None." She goes, "That's my point."
Yeah.
I said, but you said it best when you said, we remain at that state, and it's so hard to come down from it, and you're hypervigilant.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we roll. And some people don't understand it, but we try to understand it, and things like this, I think, helps us.
I think understanding it, because I've done a lot my own internal research on myself. I know that I can tell that you were a tough guy. I was a tough guy. And tough guys, we are great at stuffing. We suppress the stuff, right?
Well, you're so right.
So I walked in the VA and they go,
"This is a good purge."
Right. I walked in the VA and I asked them a question. I go, "You have PTSD." They didn't even play. They went right to it. He didn't wait to tell me 3 months later your decision's been made.
Yeah.
I go, I'm having this going on. He's like, and I was so prideful and so macho that I could not see myself as a broken person or admit to having any disabilities.
Right.
And I'd gone,
Well, you're so right.
I did not apply for my benefits for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I suffered those 20 years with machismo pulling me forward as my only motor. So you get the big ass engine, you get this big motor of 2,000 horsepower pulling you down the road at like 200 miles an hour, but the problem is that your tires are burning off and you're on the friggin' you're rolling on the rims.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The sparks coming up, right?
Boy, Len, you're so right, because it wasn't until my wife told me, "Honey, please, go get checked."
Right.
Please.
Right.
when I'm waking up, and I'm by myself in my bed, and she's not there.
Right.
And I asked her, where were you? You were having some stuff going on, so I thought it'd be better that I leave. I didn't even know.
Yeah. I have dreams. I have dreams, and I have to sometimes sleep separately. I have no shame in that. Yeah. Whoever hears me, hears me. You have it too, probably.
But if it wasn't for her telling me, honey, go, I wouldn't have gone.
You know,
so I'm thankful for that. You know,
your awareness. You have to just maintain an awareness of what it is and learn how to back yourself down. That's what I think, because I know that I stay
down, baby.
I stay away from situations that spark me up, but it's like you know, I told them, I said, and I'm putting out my personal shit out here. It's like, I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of me being put in a situation with them.
Exactly.
You understand?
Your spot's freaking on, man.
Right.
I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of me.
And then what people try to do, people try to turn PTSD around, and they try to say, to you, oh, it's about being afraid. Like, not when you're an attack dog. It's afraid that you're going to not be able to let somebody pet you, and you're going to attack them and hurt them and put yourself in a predicament and end up in a bad situation. And that's
exactly.
And I try to explain that. You know, my wife learns about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that I feel that, and you put it in perspective when you said it. You know, it's not being worried about them.
Well,
it's about me. You know.
You see the media, and there's this guy, I saw this stupidest video, this guy goes, oh, I shot a gun and I had PTSD. It was like, dude, that has nothing to do with anything.
No, nothing. I remember that,
Yeah, I was like, come on, that's comedy. That's an insult.
Yeah.
But I try to deal with it more than I try to, you know, be living in it, even though it's there. It's been a ghost on my back for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
You know? I woke up 20 years later, 2 divorces later, life in ruins, going, wait a second, you were successful for a minute. You were successful for a minute, and you just fell off a cliff. Why are you even here?
Yeah.
And that's when the final crash.
You're so right.
The final crash for me, that's what cracked open the shell, and all the goblins and everything came to the surface. And I was waking up from it, and it's like, I'm like, who's screaming? Oh, that's me. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
and
exactly.
And I make very much light of it. But I try to help shipmates. There's people I run into that have it, and they might think, well, we weren't in Da Nang, or we weren't in the DMZ, or we weren't in this. I go, that's not what we're talking about. You were, one thing to be a sitting target on guard, living in fear. Another thing to be proactive.
Wondering when you're going to get hit. There's no knowing.
Right.
It's just a matter of time, and you're living in that state where one eye's open, one eye's closed, and you're thinking, all I'm looking at egress. How am I going to get out of here? With no lights, with no power. How am I going to get to the surface when I'm on the frickin', below decks, 3 decks down? You know, I'm picking my route of how the hell I'm going to get out of there and who I'm going to get out of there with.
Yeah.
That's my thought process, you know. And people say, oh, well, you don't have no problem. Well, you go dark in the water.
Right.
You go dead in the water. We've been there in exercises. And when the shit hits the fan and you take a hit, like some of the ships have, you know, that's all you're thinking about. How am I going to make it back to the top? You know, I'm going to make it to the main deck. That's all I ever thought.
That's the kind of thing.
That's enough in its own.
You know, what I believe, I don't know it to be the fact, but what I believe has a big effect on me, and I talked about it on other podcasts, is I caught pirates at night in the Gulf, blacked out black in the Zodiac, and had them chased away. And they never got on board. But what it could have happened is something that's probably deep in my psyche. That's one of the many indicators. So I just use that as an example, and I'm like you falling off the boat, like you were that's enough right there. That's enough right there, like death, out of control in the ocean, and you know the danger. You know?
My thought, I was going to sink to the bottom, and I'm telling you what, if I wouldn't have switched vest, this keeps running in my mind.
Right.
It never goes away.
Right.
What if I wouldn't have switched that? that.
Right.
My body would have pushed almost completely out of the vest, and I could have been bowing just to get my head back to the hole.
Yeah.
Because that vest was too big for me.
Oh.
But they said, Esparza, we're getting ready to go. Fuck it, that's what you got to have. I said, hell no. And it just so happened that my buddy said, I'm not going. Take mine. And it fit better. And that vest kept my head where it was supposed to be.
Well, I trained all the lifeguards for all the Army guys in Italy for all the bases. Mm-hmm. And I had a guy come train me when I was in high school who was from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And Hawaii, this is the closest I get to your SBU swimming stuff. And so this in Hawaii, they'll have 200 applicants for 3 positions. There's like a 3 to 5 rough, a 5 mile run and a 3 mile rough water swim. And yeah, it's hardcore. And then when I'd become a lifeguard, and this is a tangent, but whoever's listening is going, okay, where's this going? We used to go, help me, I am drowning. They'd have like the person sitting there, and then you would dive below and turn them around and put them in a cross-chest carry, right? Well, Mr. Hawaii did not play games. This was after being a lifeguard a couple years in a row, I learned about friggin' water combat. This guy...
Oh, yeah.
This guy could...
It's going to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. This guy could dolphin kick up above his knees, above the water. I mean, this guy was amazing, right? Chris Horsfall. Wow. I'll never forget this guy. So I go to get him.
Dolphin kick saved me many times.
I get him in a cross-chest carry in the deep end. He flips around on me, locks me under, and pulls me under and keeps me there for over a minute underwater. You know, fighting him. And he's like, this is what it's like for real. This is not a game. Because he saw a lot more drowning than the base swimming pool out in the ocean, right? He was teaching me the real stuff, not the glorious stuff. And they don't just sit there and wait to get rescued. And he was telling me stories about how, you know, people, a huge, like, Samoan guy jumped in to save this scrawny little 9-year-old, and the 9-year-old grabbed this 250-pound guy's wrist, shattered his wrist with their adrenaline squeeze, because that's how dangerous a drowning victim is. So that's water combat. And I fought this guy off me. I punched him right in the balls. Wow. Let go of me. I didn't use the pressure points. The pressure points in lifeguarding did not apply, okay? So this is a lot similar to what you go through in SWCC, and a lot similar to what you go through in SEALs when they start ripping off your mask and all that.
We had to do 5 days of drown proofing, and that was hell. They literally drowned your ass.
Yeah. I did it for 2 weeks with this guy. So then when I get to train the airborne guys, I would, I had some big, cocky, yoked-out, buff guy, and I'm a little shorter than a chubby guy, and I said, he arm wrestled me, and he wins. He's like, yeah, I'm the man. I said, wait till I meet you in the water, bud.
He's like, get you in my domain.
So I was... That's
why I kept saying. That's what I always saying. We're freaking keepers of the raging main, baby.
That's but you see,
my motto.
Letting it out, talking about it, lets you understand it. Holding it in, you don't know. I was too macho to look back. I didn't, Gil, I didn't look back at the Navy for 20 years until I went into the VA when life had finally crashed me on my head. And the VA came to help me out, and I was very grateful, and, it balanced out my life. And it was amazing to me.
That's what happened to me, and I'm so thankful for it, like you.
Right?
Like I said, when I started reconnecting with my shipmates, with you guys.
Yeah.
It's been a way of healing for me.
I think so.
Talk to all my old shipmates, man. It's been a way of healing, and I'm digging it, man, because I'm walking with a spring in my walk, and I'm thinking about my buddies, man. I'm thinking about these freaking war stories that we had, and I'm okay with it. And I'm going to be okay. I'm still here. I'm still swimming. I'm still kicking. But
we didn't understand. We didn't understand the old fogies we used to listen to, what they were tripping on, why they loved hanging out together at the VFW or, meeting up. We didn't understand what that was about when we were younger. And then we're like, they must be bored and lonely. It's not even about that. It's not
about. It's about the camaraderie, man. The being around the brothers that it's to the right, to the left, man, you know?
Someone you went on mission with. You don't go on mission with a lot of your civilian friends. Not the same way unless you're a SWAT guy or you do something extreme.
No way.
You build that bond. But very few professions do you ever go through anything like this. And you know,
Right.
you know, you could be, and I'm not criticizing the Air Force for this. They do a lot of important stuff, but you could be in the Air Force and be a communications sergeant, and you have to do important stuff. But you're never out at sea where your ship can catch on fire, and you have to fight off NBC and all these other things that could happen to you.
Where anything is a matter of life and death, from checking a compartment without the proper O2 analyzer and inspecting it for proper air.
Right.
That easy. For slipping on a frickin' knee knocker, hitting a knife edge and killing yourself.
Yeah.
You know, from frickin' being too close to the anchor chain when she's going down on a frickin' Medmore or a frickin' whiskey anchorage, and you're on the frickin' watch to the chain.
Yeah.
You know, for pulling stores and shooting the bolo over and the line snaps. You know?
Yeah.
Anything for the rotating of the 5-inch mountain, you're in the way and it knocks the shit out of you. You know?
Or jumping off the back of the boat and getting hit with cement, for that matter, like you just said.
Yeah, that's what I mean, brother. But it was always, you had to be on your toes. You had to be on your toes. So,
well,
I miss the fleet. You know?
Is it that we're older now and we miss being younger, or do we just miss that sense of purpose that we had that was the Navy? You know? Go ahead.
I think I feel that way. I miss the sense of purpose.
Right.
In the fleet.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm really enjoying my brothers, man, and seeing where they're at today in life. Like, I go freaking my old dog. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
The dude's world renowned. I mean, he's the shit.
Yeah.
He's the shit.
Yeah.
And all of us, we've all done good, you know?
That's a happy feeling when you see you're happy for your friend's success, and you're happy for them to find balance in their life or to work through a tough time and come out the other end. And to see them still standing, it matters. And you have a different bond with your shipmates than you did your best friends in high school or your friends that you made after. It's just a different bond.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you know, I had a reunion, my first reunion with the USS John F. Kennedy, my group, Big John, and from ComDiv, we all got together last year for the first time, and some of the brothers are no longer around.
Yeah.
You know, my partner, Ralph Barnett, man, RM3 Barnett, some of the other ones that are no longer there, we miss them. But we got together, man, we laughed and got drunk. My wife tells me when we're flying home, she goes, you know, that really wasn't a lot of fun because all y'all did was drink. She goes, we have to plan activities next time. I said, honey, we were drinking freaking Mad Dog 2020. We were shit-faced. Because that's what we used to do when we were in the fleet. We used to grab a bottle of Mad Dog. We'd freaking hang around and drink and get wasted.
Oh, that stuff was
here we are,
wicked.
Old successful men with our wives.
Yeah.
And we just had a 3-day drunk fest.
You know, But
it was fun.
It's funny, Gil. My wife is significantly younger, which I'm happy for because it keeps me moving.
Amen.
You know. So I was like, hey, do you want to come hang out with a bunch of grandpas, or just like the grandpa that you know? I'm gonna go hang out with the boys. She's like, go do your thing, honey, because we had a meetup with 125 shipmates out in Oakland.
Awesome.
So we had a boat. We were sailing on the bay that we used to sail out of, and oh my gosh, California, you got, you know, everything going on there. You know, everyone's drinking, smoking, having a good time, and
heck yeah!
It was.
I mean, we were having cigars, drinking wine, having a nice cold beer, telling sea stories. We were talking about the days we used to go down Hampton Roads Boulevard, man, and hang out at the freaking bars and just kind of the knockout, drag-out fights in Rosie Roads, Puerto Rico, and freaking Rhoda, Spain, and all these places. And we just laughed to our heart's content, man. And for me,
yeah,
that was the moment that I felt, you know what, man, this is good. This is good for my soul.
Oh, you
and
feel,
that's why I'm
there was
so
no
thankful
high.
to get with your podcast. Yeah.
I thank you.
I'm so thankful with your pod team, man, you know.
Well, I'm going to do more of your ship, and I'm going to do more of other ships too, because I want all the ships to have this. And if it's coming from AEC stories, I maybe have to change my title to The Mount Hood and Its Friends or something.
Yeah, you're doing Keepers of the Raging Main. You know?
That's a great one. I think.
Because
go ahead.
Because we are, man. We're freaking salts, man. So.
Never knew I would be one day,
but
we became one.
I know. I appreciate you, man. But
no problem, Gil.
I'm not ready to roll off here.
Well, thank you so much for your podcast, Gil. I'm going to edit it up and make it wonderful. Anyone you want to say hi to?
Awesome.
Your shipmates on the Joey D?
Oh, man. All of the crew from the Joey D, man, that we sailed together. We sailed in seas. We served well. We served true. We were loyal to the fleet, loyal to each other, and at least we forget those that are no longer with us. I send a shout out to them. But most importantly, man, I want to thank you, man. I mean, you're our hero, man, for doing what you're doing and keeping it alive, and it's a way of healing for me. I want to thank you for that. So.
Well, thank you so much, brother. I feel the same way. I like to relate to your age and your group of people, and I feel kind of like I wasn't in the fleet then, but I was I was in Naples, Italy, playing football, Sigonella, Sicily, playing football, walking around sailors.
Yeah, you were there, man. You were there with us, man. You were part of it.
It's all good,
You were part of
brother.
it, and thank you, man, for what you're doing, and let's keep this thing rolling.
Hey, thank you, and send your friends, and you know what, everybody, look us up on Facebook, and look us up on AEC Stories. Go ahead.
I have you on my pallet. You know what I do at work, man? I slap my phone in, put my headphones in, and while I'm working, doing paperwork, I'm listening to the podcast.
Which ones have you been checking out? Some of the ones from our ship, even though you weren't on that one, it kind of jogs you back, huh?
I listened to Grover's and yours. It was awesome. Grover, he's a trip, man. He's crazy.
Mr. Hollywood.
Dog, he's a trip. Mr. Hollywood, man. I want to be like him. I mean, I can't kick it with the big wigs like he has.
Well, he's done that, but you want to know, because I've hung out with some of those people too. At the end of the day, It's about the people you serve with, and that matters to you more, and it matters to him more than any movie he's ever made and any famous person he's ever met.
I know.
It's his shipmates.
He's so awesome.
Right?
I told him next time that my son's invited me next year to the Marine Corps club in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Cookie's Tavern. He invited me next year, and Grove wants to go with me because he's so well versed in weapons, and they did one of the largest weapon shoots, and I think Doc would be good to be there with us just to keep us from killing each other.
I think that would be a great thing for you guys to do. I'm going to try to visit him. Maybe I'll visit all you guys one day, for sure.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I'll let you know when it happens because I want Doc has to be there, and I'd like him to be there in the Marine Corps 2nd Division Marjet, which was the big push in Fallujah during the invasion.
Oh, yeah.
We're all there, and they're part of that unit, and my son was part of that unit. So.
Oh, my dad was a Marine. My dad was a Marine officer, so I know.
yeah.
It's kind of
all
funny.
right, brother. Well,
thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right.
You'll hear it soon.
Cool.
Take it easy.